They laughed. Not loud, just that sharp, polite kind of laughter that stings more than it should. My sister Chloe raised her glass and added, "This is my sister Morgan. She works somewhere in the tech tunnels, I think. Wires, switches, breaker boxes. She's kind of a magician for broken things." Laughter again. Someone near the cheese tray went, "Wow. That's unique." I just stood there, holding a plastic cup of ginger ale, smiling like it didn't matter. Like I hadn't heard that same joke in 20 different versions, at 20 different family events. But what none of them saw coming was that less than 5 minutes later, the CEO of a billion-dollar aviation group cut through that rooftop crowd, walked right past Chloe, and shook my hand. "You must be Morgan Hale," he said. "We've been trying to track you down. Your system redesign saved us from a $2 million delay." Suddenly, the air went quiet. No more small talk. No more polite condescension. Just that awkward, collective shift when a room realizes it had no idea who you really were. "My name is Morgan. I fix things people don't notice until they stop working. I don't wear heels or pitch decks. I wear steel-toed boots and carry a voltmeter. Once I was supposed to be a doctor. I had a scholarship, early admission to med school, and a dorm room lined with textbooks. But then Mom had a stroke, and suddenly anatomy exams turned into physical therapy routines. Dorm rooms became hospital rooms. And tuition money? That went to medical supplies, electric bills, and gas to get us to appointments. Chloe? She stayed in the city with our aunt. She got good at networking, good at rising, and somewhere along the way, she forgot the person who once wired her first office's power by hand. The person who kept the lights on literally. That person was me. I didn't resent Chloe for rising fast. She always knew how to walk into a room and make people listen. She could turn small wins into headlines and coffee chats into promotions. She wasn't evil. She was just polished, shiny in the way that looks like success. And I was not. I was the one who stayed home when things fell apart. The one who sat by Mom's bed, reading her test results aloud so Dad wouldn't have to. The one who unclogged the bathroom sink when the hospice nurse said, "We're not licensed for that." That's when I started learning how things worked. Not medicine, mechanics. Fuses. Drains. The HVAC unit that made an awful rattling sound every time winter rolled in. You'd be surprised how many late nights I spent on YouTube watching people rewire thermostats with a flashlight in their mouth. At first, I didn't understand anything, but then something clicked. When Mom passed, I didn't go back to med school. The scholarship had expired. The grief hadn't. And Dad, well, he mostly stared at the floor. I needed to pay bills. Fast. So I took a temp job at the airport. Not glamorous, it started with handing out safety vests and logging maintenance requests in a dusty office trailer. But one night, the terminal lost power, and nobody could find the on-call technician. So I grabbed a toolkit, found the fuse box, and got the lights back on. Nobody thanked me. But the next day, the airport supervisor asked if I wanted to shadow the real maintenance crew. I said yes. That's how it started. It took years. Classes at the community college. Certifications. Night shifts. I kept my head down and my hands busy, while Chloe climbed glass staircases and skyscrapers. I was crawling through crawl spaces, figuring out how to stop a leaky duct from flooding a breaker panel. She posted inspirational quotes on LinkedIn. I carried duct tape in my back pocket like a security blanket. And honestly, that was fine with me. Until the day I got the call. A new airline partnership. Massive investment. New gates, new terminals, and a full redesign of the ventilation and backup systems. The contract was through a third-party integrator. The name of the airline wasn't even on the documents at first. All I knew was that they needed someone who could make a 40-year-old utility grid play nice with modern automation, without shutting down the terminal. Guess who they called? I worked 12-hour days for months. My hands were cracked from the cold. I missed my birthday. I ate vending machine peanuts for dinner more times than I care to admit. But when we flipped the final switch, when the sensors came online and the whole system purred like it had been built yesterday, I didn't need applause. I had data, performance benchmarks, a quiet pride that lives in the bones. I didn't even know Chloe's company was involved. Not until I saw her name on a press release for the launch party. Senior VP of Communications. Of course. Then came the invite. A cheerful text message. You should totally come. It'll be great networking. Maybe even inspiring. Dizzy. I stared at it for a long time. She didn't know. She had no idea I was the reason that terminal was even functional. She just wanted to parade me like some curious prop. Look, my sister does blue-collar things. Isn't that quaint? I could have said no. I should have. But something in me wanted to see what would happen when Truth walked into the room. Quietly, confidently, and took up space. The event was held at the Skyview Conference Hall, a glass-paneled rooftop that overlooked the entire Atlanta skyline. You could see the planes landing from one side, and the twinkle of city lights from the other. It smelled like perfume and polished steel. Everything about it whispered importance, and I felt wildly out of place. I wore a dark green blouse I'd ironed 3 times, slacks that still had traces of solder from last week's install, and a pair of boots I polished so hard they practically squeaked. Meanwhile, Chloe floated around in a crimson dress, with sleeves like silk and heels that clicked like applause. When she saw me, her eyes lit up, not with warmth, but that brand of excitement people get when they see a photo op. She linked arms with me, leaned in, and said, "Glad you came. Smile. There are cameras." Then she turned to her colleagues and announced, "This is my sister Morgan. She works in technical operations. You know, wires and switches. Super handy." People nodded politely. One guy actually said, "Hey, every company needs a MacGyver." I smiled, didn't flinch, didn't explain, but deep down, something in my chest pinched. 10 minutes in, Chloe was already holding court near the center of the room. Her laugh loud, her hands expressive. She had that sparkle people mistake for charisma. I stood by the refreshment table, pretending to study the difference between artisan sparkling water and vintage tonic. But I wasn't there for the drinks. I was waiting, and then it happened. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. People turned slowly, casually, as if they weren't expecting anything worth noticing, until they saw him. Victor Chen, chairman of Altair Aviation Group, the man behind the multi-million-dollar partnership, the one Chloe had posted about nonstop for weeks. He stepped onto the rooftop like he owned the air. Tall, composed, zero hesitation, and instead of heading toward the press circle or the podium, turned and walked straight toward me. "Excuse me," he said. "You're Morgan Hale, correct?" I blinked. "Yes, sir." He smiled, not the corporate kind, but genuine. "I was hoping you'd be here. Your retrofitting work on Terminal G's subgrid saved us a nightmare." Suddenly the room stilled. Chloe, mid-conversation, stopped talking. So did the guy pouring champagne. The clink of glassware paused as if the whole rooftop hit mute. Victor kept going. "Your reports were clean. Your problem-solving was surgical." My engineers kept asking, "Who is this woman?" I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. "Thank you," I said softly. He extended a business card. "If you ever want to skip the subcontractors and come in direct, we'd be lucky to have you." People started whispering, turning, suddenly curious about the woman they just labeled wires and switches. And Chloe? She stood still, wine glass frozen halfway to her lips, eyes wide, smile gone. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to, because in that moment, I wasn't the side note anymore. I was the headline no one saw coming. Victor moved on to shake other hands. I placed his card carefully in my bag. Not because I wanted anything, but because I wanted to remember the moment when the story changed. When competence spoke louder than connections. When results outshined resumes. When my name, the one they used to forget, was the one they remembered first. I stayed by the drink table for a while, just breathing. Nobody swarmed me. There were no flashbulbs, no spontaneous applause, but the silence around me had shifted. It wasn't the awkward kind anymore. It was respectful, and that felt heavier than praise. I felt Chloe before I saw her. She moved slowly now, not like earlier, not the heels clicking. Center of the room strut, but careful, quiet steps. She stopped a few feet away, didn't speak right away, just stood there, glass in hand. I scanning the floor like she was looking for the right words, hidden between the tiles. Finally, she said, "I didn't know." I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't performing anymore. "I know," I said. A pause stretched between us. Not tense, just full of things we never said. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you," she added. I raised an eyebrow. "Sure you were." Not bitter, just honest. She winced. I didn't expect it to backfire. Another beat. Then I said, "That's the funny thing about truth. It doesn't need to shout. It just waits and walks in when it's ready." She sipped her wine. No words this time, so I kept going. "You always wanted me to be impressed by your world. The parties, the titles, the speeches." I smiled just a little. "But you never asked about mine. About the nights I worked until sunrise because a generator wouldn't stabilize. Or the time the fire suppression system failed, and I had to climb 3 flights in a blackout to reset it manually before an evacuation was triggered." Her mouth parted, maybe in surprise, maybe in guilt. "I didn't know," she repeated. "Because you never looked," I said. We stood there in the noise of other people's conversations. Everyone else had moved on. But for us, this moment felt overdue. Chloe finally whispered, "I guess I always thought you'd given up on your future, on yourself." I nodded. "A lot of people thought that." She looked up, eyes glassy now. "But you didn't," she said. "No," I replied. "I didn't give up. I rebuilt." And there it was. That was the word that had been missing from our story all along. Rebuilt. Not failed. Not abandoned. Not settled. I had taken the broken pieces and created something solid. Something mine. She took a breath like she was going to say something else. But then her phone buzzed. She looked down, checked it, then looked back up. "I should probably go rejoin the execs." I nodded. "I'm not stopping you." She hesitated, then softer. "You coming?" I paused, then smiled. "Maybe later. I want to finish my ginger ale." She nodded slowly, turned and walked away. But this time, she didn't walk like I was beneath her. She walked like she didn't know exactly where she stood anymore. And me? I stood still, letting it all settle. Not angry, not proud, just clear. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying anyone else's story, only mine. The next morning, I was back in my shop by 7:15. Same scuffed up floor. Same buzzing overhead light that flickered when the microwave kicked on. Same little bell on the door that rang slightly off-key. And I loved it. Not because it was glamorous, but because it was real. Sam was already there as usual. Retired electrician. Grumpy by default, loyal by choice. "Big night?" he asked, handing me a cup of too strong coffee. I nodded. "Anything explode?" I shook my head. "Just egos." He smirked. "Didn't press." That's the thing about people like us. We don't need long explanations. Just straight answers, warm coffee, and tools that work. Miles came in next. High school senior. Bright, awkward. Always humming to himself when he soldered. "Hey, Miss Hale. Guess what?" "What?" I figured out how to fix that weird blinking issue on the control panel for the loading dock fans. It was a voltage drop from a corroded splice. I rerouted it and insulated the line. I blinked. That's impressive. He beamed. That kid was going places. And maybe, just maybe, I was part of the reason. Later that day, a woman walked in, mid-70s, tiny frame, holding a coffee maker like it was a newborn. "It won't turn on," she said. "My husband made coffee with this every morning for 41 years. I took it gently, opened the casing, cleaned out the buildup, replaced a shorted fuse, reconnected the worn-out wiring. 15 minutes later, I flipped the switch, and it gurgled to life." She gasped, covered her mouth with both hands. Then she cried. Not loud, just deeply. She whispered, "He's been gone 2 years. But every time I see this thing, I think of him standing at the counter, whistling off-key while it brewed." She looked at me like I'd just brought back a piece of her past. And in a way, I had. That's what I do. I fix what's broken, even when it's not about the wires. After she left, I stood behind the counter and stared at the machine for a long moment. It wasn't about appliances. It was about people, memories, continuity. Sometimes, the thing you bring back to life isn't the object. It's the meaning that came with it. Chloe texted me that evening. Just one line. "Thank you for being solid." I didn't respond right away. Not because I was upset, but because I was busy soldering a circuit board that controlled the fire panel in Terminal D. People assume that if you're not loud, you're not important. If you don't post it, it didn't happen. If your name isn't on a sign, you're just filler. But that's where they're wrong. I don't need to be seen to matter. I just need to work, to serve, to build things that last. Sometimes I still think about that gala. The red dress, the whispered laughs, the moment the room flipped. But I don't replay it like a trophy. I hold it like a compass, a reminder that one night of recognition doesn't define you. What defines you is who you are when no one's clapping. A week later, Chloe showed up at my shop. No warning, no press badge, just jeans, sneakers, and a bag of coffee from that fancy place she used to love in college. "I brought you this," she said, setting it on the counter. I raised an eyebrow. She shrugged. "It's your favorite. Still remember?" I nodded. "I remember." She glanced around the room, at the shelves I built by hand. The tools hung like artwork. The old stereo still wired into the breaker box. "This place is kind of amazing," she said softly. "It's mine," I replied. She didn't stay long. But before she left, she asked, "How do you know when it's enough? Like when the work you do matters, even if no one's watching?" I smiled. Not smug, not self-righteous, just whole. "You don't wait for someone to notice," I said. "You listen for the silence when something finally works again. And then you keep going." She nodded. Didn't argue. That was new. That night, I sat on my back porch, feet up, sky dimming, a cool breeze brushing past my sleeves. And I thought about the strange kind of peace that comes, not from applause, but from alignment. The kind that happens when your values match your actions, when what you do with your hands reflects who you are when no one's looking. That's the kind of life I've built. People like Chloe chase lights. They need the sparkle, the press release, the name badge. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as they remember that the lights only work because someone ran the wiring. That someone was me. I still get job offers. People call. They promise titles, corner offices, relocation bonuses. But I always ask the same question. Can I still get my hands dirty? If the answer's no, I pass. Because the truth is, I don't need a platform. I already have a foundation. Miles is graduating next spring. Wants to start his own repair truck. Says he's going to name it Morgan's Method. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my wrench. But deep down, it meant something. He saw me, not just the work, but the way I work. And maybe that's enough of a legacy. Chloe and I still don't talk like sisters in a movie. We don't braid each other's hair or cry over photo albums. But every now and then, she sends me links to tools I might like, asks questions, listens to the answers. That's a start. Sometimes respect doesn't arrive in fireworks. It shows up quietly. Like an email that just says, "You were right." So if anyone asks me now, "What do you do?" I don't hesitate. Say, "I fix what's broken." And I don't just mean appliances. I mean moments, systems, people who forgot their worth. Not to prove anything, not to be seen, but because someone has to keep things running, while the rest of the world keeps looking up.